see a lot of regulars, and then this week we have numismatician. Is that
Numismaticians.
Nu-
You can say that.
You can say that, I can.
Yeah.
The money people also, yeah. Good to have you here. We send the soccer around each week. We don't charge for these programs. You probably have noticed on the front door there is an admission fee to come and see the courthouse. We reluctantly decided to do that because well, when the boat people come, we actually get a per capita. The boat company pays us for the tours that people come here, so we keep track of that, and we thought it was only fair to also charge local folks. Of course, if you're a member, then you get in just by virtue of your membership. Downstairs at the desk are membership forms, and we welcome members. That not only gets you in the doors, but it also gets notices to you events. And we will have some more programs, and we'll be open up, of course, for the tourist season once again. These programs don't just happen. We keep collecting ideas all the time, and if anybody here is working on a project and would like to be on the agenda for next February, let us know, and we'll keep in touch, and hope to have another good series next year. Every year we think we've exhausted all the possibilities, but and then somebody comes up with new things, and just like this year, some wonderful programs once again. What else do I have to say? We have all the tickets in the little box. We'll have the drawing, and I believe wheel riding is the last of the...
The last one is Raising Wheat.
Raising Wheat by horsepower.
That's
By
right.
horsepower, okay. Another one of the good DVDs that we have from a collection that goes way back 40-some years. One of the earliest projects we did was slide tape programs when that was the newest technology, and we had a wonderful setup for that and had some wonderful programs, but we've put them on disc, and they are for sale also down at the desk. Be sure you stick around after a while for coffee and cookies, and Rodger will take a look at any coins or bills or anything that you might want identified. Look at this stack of books here. He has brought his library along. That's a good exercise bringing them up the steps. So I think maybe that's all the announcements we have. Sandy will remind me if we don't. We'll have the drawing right afterwards, and then Rodger will be taking a look at your coins, and also take a look at the courthouse. If you haven't been in here for a while, we've got some wonderful new displays down in the jail. Chris Bolton here was our consultant on that, and did a lot of good work to make that really more accessible and self-explanatory. Take a look in there, and once again, thank you for coming. And without further ado, Rodger Nichols. Rodger is one of our board members here, and Rodger and I are working on a project for about the first 30 years of the programs. We did audio tapes. We are putting all of those on disc also for our own collection here, to go back and examine them, anybody who's doing historical research, but also to have a copy of that out at the Discovery Center out at the library there. So we are recording these programs, video recording nowadays, and we hope to make that accessible for people studying the history of our area in the future. Rodger Nichols, welcome.
Thank you. The one obligatory announcement, cell phones. That's the only thing we want to mention at this point. Any other coin collectors, numismatists out there in the audience today? Anybody? Any tough questions, ask Matt, okay? He knows everything. Some of you may know that for a number of years now, I've been evaluating coins and bills for estates for many of the law firms in town. Usually what happens is mom or pop's the collector. They pass on, the kids have no clue what's going on. So the law firms hire me so I can identify what their values are. And I love it because it's a treasure hunt. You never know what you're gonna find. I hope that those of you who brought stuff, I can tell you, take this and go put it in the safe deposit box right now. That's what I'm hoping for. Well, let's get on with the show here. I have a personal PowerPoint pledge for you today, because I've seen a lot of PowerPoint pledges, PowerPoint presentations. One, I will not fill the screen with tiny print you can't read. Two, I will not read the words on the screen to you as if you have suddenly forgotten how to read. And three, not a bullet point in the entire presentation. So there you go. All right. Oh, now some of you, by the way, have seen a preliminary version of this at some of the service clubs. So when I asked Carl if I could do that, but I was concerned, how does this tie in with the local history? He says, well, what do you think the pioneers had in their pockets? Okay. So I'm going to do a little preliminary on the wagon trains and what did it cost to come out here? By the way, that's a Monopoly man with a cowboy hat on it. You might recognize that. Well, it varied. One of the cheapest way is to hire on and herd some cattle west. And you can actually sometimes either break even or make up a couple of bucks on the wagon trip. Of course, that's if you were just riding alone. It's not all in the family, which could get kind of expensive there. But a lot of people there were farmers that came west. They had some of the equipment, they had some of the stuff, and it was really kind of an interesting combination. Weight could be a problem. Expense, maybe not so much, but weight would be a killer. And the question is, do you take that anvil, you take that extra barrel of water that may make you through the desert? It's a lot of decision. Let's see, it's about 60–80% of the travelers were farmers that already owned wagon or already owned livestock. And the cost actually ran, in estimate, about $50 a person for food and other items, because these are gold $50, not just $50 now, so it was quite a bit more. Doesn't sound like much. The gold dollars at the time, in 1845 in Pennsylvania, a skilled carpenter could work a 12-hour day for $1. Families would plan the trips for months in advance because they made much of the extra clothing, they would make all the preparations, figured out they could bring seeds, that sort of thing. So again, if they had to buy this stuff, they figured it would cost between $150 and $200 a person. And if they took advantage of some of the amenities along the way, such as this wagon ferry at Jackson Hole, they could add another $20, $30. That's a serious charge at that time. So, and of course, some days, not much fun. Gee, Dad, I overturned the wagon. Shall we take a picture? Well, sometimes, you can always get some comfort from other people on the wagon train with you. I couldn't believe I found that. It's just amazing. So, and of course, it ended up where? Where is the end of the Oregon Trail? Right over there. That's right. Some lowlifes in the legislature tried to make it Oregon City, but we know what the real end is. Ezra Meeker, dedicating that, and, I forgot to my, and it says, right in there, end of the Oregon Trail, officially, and that rock's still there. All right, that's, here's a little extra we have, because I'm doing mostly obsolete stuff, but here's, since we talk about the Oregon Trail, the U.S. issued the Oregon Trail Memorial $50 intermittently between 1926 and 1939, so just in case you were interested in one of those. One of those will run you, depending on the condition, between $135 and $350 today. So, now, I jump way back. This is, did you know, originally, we were going to have a currency called a mark, as in German. And this is a test coin for what they call it says, I don't know the Latin pronunciation that well, but it looks like Nova Constellatio, or New Constellation. It's going to be one of the mottos on it. And look, it was going to be 1,000 units equals a mark. This is a one-off. They made one of these, one at 100, one at 500, etc. You can't afford to even look at these. That's how valuable they are. Again, they're unique. Now, yeah. Then we come to the next. This is called the Fugio. set. Now, here we have under the Articles of Confederation, before the Constitution was ratified. And so it was a little looser. Depending on, and numismatists have, like different churches, just like some of them believe this is the first U.S. coin. Others say, no, when the Constitution had been passed, some of the colonies / states were actually issuing their own coins at that time. The Constitution says only the U.S. government can do that. So, and I love the fact that the Latin stuff over there reads Fugio, which roughly translated means, time's flying. And it has a sundial here, and the sun is moving across it. And this is my favorite. I wish we kept this motto on our, mind your business. My understanding is that this was contributed by Benjamin Franklin. On the backside, 13 colonies interlocking. It says, "We are one United States." And I kind of like that. Sometimes it's called a chain set, sometimes it's called a Fugio set. And there's a story behind this. And it goes like this. Well, first of all, before there was the pattern, you can see that mind your business thing showed up on the continental paper money. And the phrase "not worth a continental" soon became, because they inflated like crazy, paper money with nothing to back it during the war. So you see it in odd denominations. 1/3 of a dollar, $55. Why 55? No idea. But this Latin says, "After clouds the sun, post nobila Phoebus." Hard to work that into a sentence otherwise. So the story, love the story. When it came time for the Continental Congress under the Articles of Confederation to say, we're going to award somebody to make these coins, these two guys were the competitors. This guy won the bid. Why? Because he gave $10,000 to this guy.
Sounds familiar.
That's a great start to our lovely country, isn't it? 10,000 in those days. We're talking gold, 10,000. Yeah, I don't know what that would translate now, because I haven't done that. Let's see. Oh, so the contract required this fellow back here, this guy, Jarvis, and his father-in-law, who were putting this stuff together, to make 300 tons of these Fugio sets. They didn't do that. They took about 30 tons of copper that the government had to start them off with, and they made these for the Connecticut, which was still issuing coins again, as they could, because they were thinner coins and they could make more money by doing that. Oops, they did turn in 4 tons, by the way, to the, instead of the 300, and then had to flee the country, so. And this, by the way, is supposed to be, I'm not sure, as I say it, the inscription reads "Founder of Connecticut." Look at that evil guy. I would not trust that guy if he was my founder. There are many, many varieties of these that have different looks, and I think one of them is called Evil Guy or something like that. Anyway, so those are, again, that was the state's good, and some of them did issue their own coinage. Now, we get to, oh, we thought that was the Fugio again. Now, what's this doing here? This is the Spanish pillar dollar, and it's unusual. At the very beginning, when they're trying to get all this stuff going, get these Fugio cents and get some change, there wasn't a lot of coins circulating. And it was kind of the British government on purpose kept money scarce so there would be ties to Britain stronger that way. So when we became a country, one of the first acts they did is say, we're going to legalize several countries' money as legal tender in this country. Stuff from France, from Spain, and a couple of other countries, and were for the 3-year period legal tender. This one was legal tender up until 1857, and gave us kind of a dual coinage. Why was this one so important? Well, for one thing, it had been put out by the Spanish for more than 200 years before it started as this country. They never once adulterated it with other metals. So the standard was really, really good. And people liked it. But they had an unusual way of making change. Seriously, they would chop it in half. The denomination on here is 8 royals, or 8 reales, as it says in Spanish. And that makes for an interesting question. So where did this come? That's where 2 bits, 4 bits came from, because each one of the 1/8 of that was a bit. You've always wondered, where did the 12.5 cents come in there somewhere? That's it, the translation between the Spanish dollar and of 8 reals and the US dollar of 100 cents. Interesting. And by the way, the extra tidbit, if you would cut this guy in half, they called it a picayune. There you go. Yes, it was right. Okay, good. I got an amen for the amen corner. I love that. This is great. So, you might also know it by another name. These were the pieces of 8, thus the 8 reals of pirate stores. And they were around for many, many years. And I have some coins, and one of them is one of those up here. You get a chance to look at those afterwards, because I have some of the coins here. So, now, okay, what the heck is this? Half Disney? Where did that come from? Well, it actually is pronounced half Dean. And again, this is a secondary church. It says this is the first U.S. coin because it happened, that was the date 1792. It is after the ratification at 1789 of the Constitution. So now it's no longer the Articles of Confederation. The Constitution is the full U.S. government. But this was produced only about 1,500 of these. It was not produced in the mint because the mint wasn't there yet. So there's some questions. Well, this is just a sample, and the others say, no, it got into circulation. It's legal tender. It's still legal tender. It's equivalent to 5 cents. Interestingly enough, when they started the regular production of all the coins, they didn't put it, there's no denomination on here anywhere. Apparently it was the size that told us that was a half dime. And it wasn't until that year that it switched to a half dime. And we have a half dime for you to look at it here. Interesting stuff. So now we go back a little bit. 1793 is when all the regular coins started, and one of the coins was half cent. Notice the 1/200th down here. Well, why would you have a half cent? Remember again, wages were maybe $1 for a 12-hour day. Half cent was not an unreasonable thing to have, but it also made it easier to translate between one system and the other. Because one bit was worth 12.5 cents, how do you exchange evenly if you don't have a half cent piece? So you're always a little bit off. And let's see. I threw this in as an extra because the large cent, and we have one over here to look at, also was made at the same time. Notice the 1/100, and it's big. It had twice as much copper as the half cent did. I like it when it comes out even like that. So, all right, as you might, Paul Harvey, page 3. Okay, now we move on. We're going to do some hopping back and forth in time here. This came about 3 cent piece. So the California gold rush of 1849 had a direct impact on U.S. coinage. A whole bunch of gold got dumped on the market. That meant depressed the metal's value in relation to silver. Silver became more valuable. And it became profitable to hoard and melt silver coins since they were more valuable as melted than they were as the money themselves. So by 1851, hardly any silver coins remained, and that created a real problem for merchants making change because dimes, quarters, and 50-cent pieces were all made out of silver, and they were going to be hoarded. The only coins available were making change less than $1 were the copper large cents and the half cents we just looked at, which most people found extremely inconvenient. There wasn't even a nickel as we know it because the half dime was also made out of silver. So they got hoarded as well. So, this is where they got clever here. They decided to make a 3 cent piece for a couple of reasons. One is they just lowered the cost of the stamp. Lowered the cost of the stamp. Did you hear that phrase? From 5 cents to 3 cents for U.S. first-class postage. And somebody, this guy, said, that'd be real easy to buy a stamp if you had a 3 cent piece. So they made 3 cent pieces. Now they didn't make them out of 90% silver like the other coins were getting melted down. They made it out of 75% silver. And that seemed to work pretty well for them. So, and there it is again, just to show you. Interesting, isn't it? Unusual design there. That's pretty bizarre. And some of the coins in the 1800s did not have any people's faces or symbols on them. They just had shields, or I assume that's a large C for cents, but and the 3 for the cent piece there. So let's see what we got. By the way, this was the lightest coin ever produced in the U.S. It was so small, and we'll show a comparison a bit later on, that would get lost. They also called them trimes, but the popular name was fish scales, because they were so small. We'll show show you about that. And then they decided they would make one out of nickel after a while. Notice the difference in the design, very clear. This is the silver, this is the nickel. And after a while, they stopped making it all together. Why? And they overlapped it. You could, during that time, they had your choice of silver or not silver. Why anybody would take the one that wasn't silver, no idea. Oh, and here's a comparison. You can see this is a dime and the half dime, 3-cent piece. So it was tiny, very tiny. And we have one up here for you to look at as well. So, oh yes. We may have skipped past numerically, but not in time. Your 2 cents worth, right there. The 2-cent piece was a part of response to the Civil War. All federal coinage vanished during the Civil War because they were afraid it was going to get, they were hoarded because they thought the value was going to go up on that. And many Northerners feared that if the war went poorly, paper money and government bonds might become worthless, so they wanted to hang on to real cash. So what had they do? They decided that, well, for small change, I guess we can make stuff other than out of silver. So they made these bronze 2-cent pieces. I really like them. They're very nice, and we have a 2-center up there for you to look at as well. Oh, let's see, here we go. And here, in 1863, by the way, he noted, this is the mint director, noted that while people expect a full value of their gold and silver coins, they merely want the inferior base metal money for convenience in making exact payments. During the shortage, they found that people were doing all sorts of things to get small money change. They put stamps in little plastic containers, and people were making private coins, sometimes with like a 1/5 of a cent worth of copper in it. So he said, well, we can make one of these 2-cent pieces. Sure, and do that. By the way, this is the first time In God We Trust appears on U.S. coins. And where does that come from? It comes from Francis Scott Key in the 4th verse of the national anthem. You all remember the 4th verse, don't you? Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. Anyway, and this be our motto, in God is our trust, is the line from that 4th verse. So, and at least part of the motivation for putting it on, note the date on it here, Civil War, was they hoped that God would be on the side of the North because they've got it in their coins. That's a push for me, but some people thought that. Okay, here's another unusual, a 20-cent piece. Now, why would you have a 20-cent piece? Well, a lot of it is because of this guy, who happened to own a really good silver mine, and said, we need more silver coins out there. And his argument, and this is, I tell you, arguments are no worse in the past than they are today sometimes in the Senate. He said, well, it should conform to what we do in the bills. We have a $20 bill. We don't have a $25 bill. We should have a 20-cent piece. I don't know how that follows, but people didn't like it very much. And by the way, I don't have one of those because they only made it for a couple of years, and it's extremely, even a crummy one is worth $100, so I didn't get one of those for you guys. Look how close it was to a quarter. Same year, almost identical design. There's a slight little difference in the hair here and here, but you'd have to, you could see why people didn't want it got mixed up all the time. So, all right. Now we get into the stuff that makes my size light up. Gold. I just used this one because it's a nice set that has all, this is 20th century. Of course, they were making gold coins from the beginning. By the way, there were 2 mints that most people are not aware of in the early days, Talladega, Georgia, and Charlotte, both of which only made gold coins and only did so in the early 1800s. So that they are incredibly valuable because there are very, very few of those made. Just a heads up on that. So, let's see. This collection has a face value of $75. Guess what the gold value is on that? I'll give you a hint. 3.62812 ounces collectively there. Gold closed yesterday at $1,328 an ounce. Gold value, $4,818.14. Not good enough for me. The numismatic value of these coins, because they're all in really good condition, is $5,640. So, just a heads up for you. When you have And sometimes the bullion coins, the bullion is worth more than the numismatic value because the condition is so crummy, or it's because it's too new. So sometimes it's the other way around. So that's where having these books here, by the way, each of the big fat ones is about 90 bucks a whack. So I have one for world coins from the 1800s, from the 1900s, from the 1700s, and from the 2000s. And then I have more paper money as well. So it's fun stuff. You get involved in this. Well, let's move along here to this one. Did you know they had a $3 gold piece? No. I bet you can figure out why the $3 denomination. So they could buy 100 stamps. I'm not making this up. This is your government in action back then. I know, really. Congress and the Mint director said people will buy a whole sheet of 3-cent stamps if they only had a $3 gold coin to do it. It didn't last very long. And yeah, they're nicely valued. One of these guys will run you between $500,000 and $27,000, depending on the condition of what year it is and whatnot. But nothing to this. This one here. I want one of these. Anybody wants to buy me a good birthday present? It's coming up in April. These are, there was, following the Civil War, a movement in Europe to standardize gold coining so they could have some that would relate across and have the same amount of gold in it. The 20-franc piece and a few others would like all, as a result of a numismatic union made it match the exact gold content. This was the U.S.'s going to be, so they're entering into that. And notice, what is all this stuff around here? Well, basically, it says, see, it says grams here. This is 6 grams of gold, 3/10 of a gram of silver, 7/10 of a gram of copper. So, now, anybody who could translate that probably already knew what was in the coin, but that we put it on the coin. So this, they didn't make very many of. How many? They made 15 originals, and then went back and did 425 restrikes of that. Coin collectors loved the idea at the time, tried to get them, just couldn't. However, and this I've seen in several sources, the average collector could not acquire a $4 gold piece for the mint at any price. Specimens could be seen hanging on necklaces around the necks of the madams in the best brothels in the Washington, D.C. area. Want one of those? Minimum 135,000, maximum 1.8 million at last auction. Again, very, very few of those. All right, coins to bills. I know we're going to roll through this pretty quickly. Remember these? Anybody? Anybody ever seen one of those? I actually have held one once briefly. Larry Gilpin was a manager at a local bank, and he showed me one, holding onto one corner so I wouldn't snatch it and run. And I said, really? He said, yeah. He says, I'm buying it from the bank. Because, why? Well, it's still legal tender, but you'd be stupid to spend it because you get at least 40% over face value, even in a crummy condition. In better conditions, it can be worth way, way up there. So, but these were all done back in the they stopped printing the larger bills in 1945. They're still in circulation until this guy in 1969 said, when they come into the bank, you turn them into the reserve destroyed them. Now, they don't have to, I mean, that order is in effect. They are still legal tender, but again, you don't spend it, sell it to a collector. On the $1,000 bill, and that is the two-time president, Robert Cleveland. The original bill, by the way, this is a later one. The very first one they printed had Alexander Hamilton on. People said, wait a minute, he's on the 20. No, people confuse that. No, I don't think so. But they went with it anyway. So, and James Madison on the 5,000. And who was that guy? Salmon P. Chase, first Secretary of Treasury of the United States, on the $10,000 bill. Now we get into the real money. Yes. Now you never saw one of these, and these were never issued to the public. The $100,000 bill was made, well, they only made these notes during a 3-week stretch during December 1934 and January of 1935. Never issued to the public, only used for interbank transactions. It was a lot simpler than lugging a whole ton of gold from one bank to the next. And, you're gonna love this, in 2005, the American Numismatic Association, of which I'm a member, did a giant money show in Portland. I went to it, I took my camera, and I got this photo. That's an uncut sheet of 12, or $1.2 million. That was under heavy glass, by the way. I had to get the right angle so I could get the reflection on the glass. And they had guards. But even though you can't spend, this is the one bill that has been decertified. They won't, not legal tender anymore.
What's valuable?
Last time I looked, where were we at? Put the value on one of those. 1.2 million
Sheet or just?
for the sheet. Individually, it's never come up to auction. I thought what somebody would have, I'll bet there are some somewhere, but it's never been public auction, any of those. They didn't make very many of them either. But at that same show, hey, let's talk some real money here. It's hard to read that. The denomination is $500 million on it. This is a U.S. Treasury note. It was issued for 1 year from 1963 to 1964, 3.25%. Now I know that Mike here can do this in his head, but 3.25% times 500 times, it's so I looked it up, I did that, it was 16.25 million dollars. If you park your $500 million for a year, that's what you can get on the interest. And that leads me to wondering, what is the largest denomination bill ever issued anywhere? Come on. Whoa. This is real. This is not a fake thing. They actually issued this. Zimbabwe?
More than 9?
No, not a dime. Less than a dime.
No.
But they said, in the description of it, it says would not even buy a bus ticket in the capital. That's, but that's not the highest. Right after World War II in Hungary, this one. 20 zeros. 100 quintillion. There's a famous photo, I should have grabbed it for this, but there's a photo showing a street sweeper sweeping piles of this into the gutter because it's not worth anything. Huh?
Where's the denomination on it?
It's not enough, that says that Százal means 100 quintillion in Hungarian. But you notice they didn't put it on here anywhere, but that's what it was worth. And that is my talk today. Thank you so much. I will be ready to answer questions, look at your coins, whatever. Thanks so much. So, anybody got any questions? Okay, Mike.
Was there any counterfeiting back then?
There's always been counterfeiting. Who would bother counterfeiting one of those, though?
Or how about the silver things or the,
Yes, well, there's been all kinds of counterfeiting done. One of the things I didn't mention, because I was only doing the obsolete, but many of you remember that in World War II, in 1943, the penny was made out of steel with a zinc coating on it. And some people, very few of the old copper planches got accidentally put a 1943 date on it. Those are worth thousands and thousands of dollars. Some counterfeiters would put a 43 steel one with a little copper flash on the top of it. Except that the smart people always carry a magnet with them. Like, oh, sorry. So there's an example. Oh, sorry. Oh. Sorry. I work with a microphone every day. You think I remember this stuff? I got excited talking to Mike there, I guess. Yes, Mona.
How did they, when they were cutting those coins into 2 bits and 4 bits,
Yes.
how did they cut them?
Chisel and hammer.
Really?
Yep. Yeah. The really strong guys would bend it, but no. Yes, sir.
Was there any argument perhaps over a piece of 8 actually being a piece of 8? So like, did you feel people would get into arguments about, so if you're 5 and you're breaking a cookie in half, would somebody break it and offer the piece?
Oh, yeah, well, you get to choose, I get to.
Yeah, like,
I'm sure that somebody's aim wasn't steady at some point, and then, I'm sure their argument broke out. I mean, they're real people there, yes, absolutely. I don't have any record of that, but I just know human nature that went there. Yes, sir?
Can you trust the wooden nickel idea?
Well, yeah, there are wooden nickels. They're made as a souvenir or as a promotion for a centennial. They say this would be good for X amount of. Some of them are like worth 50 cents, some are worth $1, etc. in a locality during a centennial celebration for X number of months or whatnot. And I have in my collection some of them that are, let's say, good until September 24th for any business in Fargo, North Dakota, say, or something like that. But there are people who collect those. It's called exonumia. That is things that are like coins or metals that aren't legal tender. And tokens of all kinds, bar tokens and whatnot. Some of those can be quite valuable. But you have to have book after book after book after book, because there's zillions of those. Every little town had a token or two. I have one from the Hood River bus that used to be there in the 40s. There's tax tokens from Washington State, little fiber things about that big out of red. Some of the people may remember some of those, so, yeah. Anything else? Well, thank you. I will set up here and be happy to grade coins. Oh, you have a drawing to do? Yes, before you do. No, Sandy, make sure you stir it up so hers isn't sitting on the top. Yes.
Turn my ticket in yet, man.
All right.
Don't plagiarism here. Right?
I will do the honors. Here. And this goes to Kathy Graves. Yeah.
Here's the prize.
Okay, they are serving coffee and cookies downstairs. I'm going to set up over here, and if you have coins to look at, I'd be happy to do that. Let's see, somebody just has one or two first so we can get them moved through, and somebody has more of that later. So